Hey, this is Zach from Double Your Freelancing. In this episode, we're going to talk about a big mistake that I see a lot of freelancers making with their client selection process, as well as what you can do about it, and a sort of rethinking of the freelancers offer suite. And that's suite with a UI, not suite with a WEE, that can address this big mistake. I originally shot this as a couple of YouTube videos, and one of them does share my screen. But I've sat here and I've thought about it, and the one that shares my screen I think is still valuable in an audio-only format. So I'll dive in. If you think this was dumb and useless, send me an angry email. But I think you're going to like it because there's a lot of good stuff here. So let's dive in and hopefully find it helpful. If I were to wrap it all into one little word, it'd be targeting noobs. So when we freelancers are getting started, we kind of need whatever projects we can get. And in general, in the world, there are always more newbie business owners in a given industry than there are successful, experienced business owners, because there are just always more noobs than experienced people. It's like this funnel. And down here at the bottom, there's like only 2% of the people. So when we're first starting and we need any work we can even get, we'll just pick whatever we can get, which is going to often be noobs. But the trouble with noobs is that their businesses aren't very profitable yet, so they can't pay much. They often need to eke out every last drop of value from the project that they can get in order to get the most mileage for their buck. So they're just generally not good clients for a freelancer. In general, you want to work with businesses who are doing like at least 6 figures, and that your services are like this little enhancement on some small part of their business that produces an ROI. And this applies to anything. If you're doing branding design, website design, like any of these things that are even kind of like further from the money, translation, these things are still just an augmentation on one part of the business that they're hoping will provide more value than they spend. We talk about this all the time, so I won't dive too much into like ROI and value stuff, but you can learn about it in the free Charge What You're Worth course if you haven't taken it yet, which is dyf.link/pricing course. But for today, I want to focus on this idea of targeting noob. The metaphor that's coming to mind for this for me today is this one I got from my friend Bryce Gump, who runs an agency called Major Impact Media, which is that you want to essentially like install a turbocharger on the engine that already exists for your client's business. I like that. Brennan from DYF has something similar he says that I like, which is like, we want to magnify or augment or multiply, not create. I can never remember what he said. I think it's multiply, not create. But the idea is you want an existing engine that is like humming along and working. Noobs don't really have a good engine yet. They're still building their engine. And if they don't have an engine yet, and they're just hiring you to build a core part of it, they're not really gonna be able to pay you much to do that. So that's the thing I want you to be thinking about as you think about your ideal client profile and who you can serve. Be thinking about who has an awesome engine, but like, I'm really good at carburetors or some shit. I don't really know anything about cars, but I know carburetors are in a car, and I'm really good at making carburetors, and I'm just going to put a better carburetor in here. Can you make a better carburetor? I'm sure you can. Of course you can. And everyone knows carburetors are super important. So this is a good metaphor. So that said, I've noticed that where most freelancers struggle with this is like, number one, the obvious one is, okay, that's cool, Zach. How do I find these people? And that's a big one, out of scope for this video, but I'll touch on it in a second. But another one that I've noticed that you can immediately address today is imposter syndrome. I think a lot of the time people are like, well, I'm not good enough to help someone with a dope engine yet. I'm only good enough to help people with a shitty non-functional engine. And I have noticed through my conversion rate optimization work that there are a lot of people with intimidatingly good engines, very, very, very good engines, that I couldn't make such a cool engine yet. The DYF engine's not as cool as my client's engines, but they still have shitty carburetors. They still have one part of that engine that's actually not that great, because nobody can be great at everything. No one's perfect at everything. And it's not your job to like be as good of a business owner as this client of yours. Your job is simply to know more about carburetors than your client and to build better carburetors than your client. I really hope carburetors are important. I just went with this. We got to just trust that they're important. So if you're having that imposter syndrome thing, ask yourself, like, is it true that my target client, the big baller client who I could provide a really big ROI for, if only I did this small thing well, is it true that they're actually doing a better job than I could at this zoomed in thing that I'm thinking of doing? This train of thought assumes that you have some ideas for like a targeted service offering that solves a valuable problem, which might not be true. If you don't, I just recently released this thing called the Double Your Rates Toolkit that will help you identify valuable problems, but I'm going to assume you have some ideas for a valuable problem. So assuming that you do, what I found is a really valuable exercise to like conquer this imposter syndrome is to audit some like dream clients for how well they're doing at this one thing you're thinking of helping with. So for example, if I'm doing conversion rate optimization for course creators, I might go look up some really, really big course creators, like thinking people like, I don't know, Amy Porterfield kinds of folks, or who's a big course creator besides Amy? I don't know. There are other big course creators, surely. But looking up like really big ones and seeing, are they really nailing it? Are they really kicking ass in all these areas, or do I actually see opportunities? And if the answer is no, I don't see opportunities for things they could be doing better, then maybe I peel it back a layer, because Amy is running like an 8-figure business now. So maybe I look for a 7-figure course creator and I look at their thing for opportunities. Do I see any? Answer is no. And by the way, for each of these stages, look at like 10 to 20, because you don't need everyone to become a client. You just need some people to become a client. And it's essentially this like scaling back process of validation of like, who is the most successful person I can find who is still making a mistake that I can fix? I think if I were to delete all of this video and just say that one line, that's what I would do. This would be the one line I would keep, and probably something about carburetors. So I'm going to say it one more time. Who is the most successful client I could find who still has a problem I can solve? If you can find that, that's the kind of client who can pay you the most. And I don't want to get too deep because this video is already almost 10 minutes, but where this gets really interesting that I've been thinking about in terms of math. For my conversion rate optimization business, I charge a performance-based pricing model based on global website opt-in percentage points. So as of today, for each percentage point I get you over 2%, I charge $5,000, and then 2% also $5,000. If I were to do that for some small business with a couple thousand visitors a month, there's no way they would get an ROI. If I did that for a business with a ton of traffic but no products to sell, they would not get an ROI. So for me, my ideal client profile needs to have, number one, stuff that they sell via email, and number two, a lot of traffic. If they sell more or they have more traffic, it's even better. And if I wanted to try to serve noobs, I definitely couldn't charge $5,000 per percentage point. I would have to do something like, let's say I charged a third of the price, like $1,667. Let's pretend that. And what I'm going to do, because this gets kind of mathy, is I'm going to show you some of my notes. So this is my little Notion where I make notes about my videos. So suppose I was charging a third of the price. I go from 5K per point to 1667. Suppose that my fixed cost on average to get that 1% increase is around $1,000. Where this gets really interesting is that the actual profit difference goes from 4,000 down to 667. So that's a 6x difference in profit, even though the price difference was 3x. And that's something that a lot of freelancers don't think about, because they just think about their time. They don't think about what it would cost to have somebody else do it. So they're not really thinking about profit, because it's like air quotes, all profit. But when you look at it this way, and when you think about things like client acquisition cost, we'll be putting out some other videos, or maybe they're out already, where we're talking about this idea that clients are not free. Even if you currently think they're free, I can bet you money they're not, because you're spending time to get them and you're probably also spending some money to get them. And so if you imagine a business model where you have a like customer acquisition cost of say $1,000, then you have a way, way, way different ability to actually market your services profitably if you're only charging that 1667 versus 5K. So basically, to TLDR this whole thing, because I know I got kind of in the weeds. Basically, if you go after noobs, you need to be a really good marketer, kind of counterintuitively. You might think that it's easier to go after noobs because they have like lower expectations or whatever, but it's not true. Noobs often are the most demanding, often the worst clients, whereas business owners who are further along and have a profitable business and they just need that little carburetor, they tend to be very good clients. They respect your time. They pay you well as long as you can show that ROI and make it a no-brainer. So if you're having that imposter syndrome thing, be asking yourself, who is my ideal client? Where can I find them? Working on cold outreach course right now. Ultimately, cold outreach is the best way to get specifically targeted to non-noobs because you can control who you contact and how you find them. But alas, still working on it. Basically, if you do want to target newbies, the approach that you want to take is a more highly leveraged model where you can have like done with you services, maybe some products, and that you are kind of using those tools to nurture noobs up to a more advanced level where they can actually afford your product-based services or totally bespoke services. But that's obviously more advanced. And the lower you go in price, the more you have to be a good marketer. Because if you're selling products, you need to sell a lot of products to make as much as you'd earn from one bespoke client. So I don't want to overwhelm you. I fear I already have. For today, I'm going to leave you with this. Think about your ideal client profile. Think about who a dream client would be, and then go research 10 of them and see if you can spot opportunities. Find a really, really, really nice engine with a shitty carburetor. See if you can do that. And if you can, you know that you've got the skills you need to help your dream clients. If you don't spot any opportunities, then it either means you don't have the skills needed or that the clients are just doing a really, really good job. In which case, I'd say keep looking for more. And if you find that, like, I don't know, over 85 or over 90% of the dream businesses you're finding are doing a really good job solving the problem you want to solve, then to me, that's a flag that you either need to solve a more valuable problem or that you need to find the next tier down of successful business that can still get a high ROI out of having the problem solved, but they're having a higher incidence of also not solving it. Hope that makes sense. So with that targeting noobs mistake out of the way, let's segue into what was originally a separate YouTube video where I talk about the freelancer offer suite / product ladder / ascension model that basically allows you to get the best of both worlds, where you do your bespoke services for the people with the highest budget, but you have basically different service offerings and products that give you more leverage on your time so that you can help the newer folks and nurture them up to the point where they're the more advanced folks, but without having to be broke as a consequence. In this video, we're talking about that dream offer stack, which I'll get into what that even means in a second. But first, why you should even care. So by having a really nice offer stack, also known as a product ladder or like an ascension funnel, you allow yourself to work with the very best, highest paying clients for your bespoke work, while also being able to provide value to people who are a little bit newer and help to nurture them into high paying top tier clients. So you kind of get the best of both worlds, or all three worlds really. If you've seen the other video we have about the big mistake freelancers make, which is working with newbies, this is kind of an answer to that. Because sometimes we want to help newbies. We just can't really afford to help them one-on-one. So let's talk about this idea of an offer stack / product ladder. So the idea is that you have this spectrum of like leverage for your time. On one end, let's say you create a course. Let's pretend you're a web developer and you make a course called How to Develop Your Own Website. Once you've made the course, someone can buy it, take it, improve their website. It didn't take you any time. And then on the other end, you've got bespoke services where someone hires you, you build the whole website for them, and it takes you all the time in the world. In general, if you want to earn as much as possible in the least amount of time possible, it's really important that the people you're doing this stuff for, the bespoke work people, are running really profitable businesses and you're able to provide a high ROI for them. The way I like to think about it is imagine that you're able to add, let's say 5% revenue to somebody's business. If you add 5% revenue to somebody's business who's earning $100,000 a year, you just made them $5,000. If you add 5% to someone's $1 million a year business, you just earned to them $50,000 for the same work. So be asking yourself, what's the impact I'm making, and like what's the thing that augments it within a client's business? Where the idea of the offer stack comes in is that the process for raising your rates is kind of like raising the bar for what the bare minimum is of client you'll work with. So for example, that first one was $100,000 and that made 5K. You might decide you want to charge 7.5 now, but in order to charge 7.5, they kind of need to be earning at least $200,000. So you kind of raise your bar there. And anyone who's below that metric needs to get support from you in other ways. And that's where this offer ladder really shines. So I would break the ladder down into probably 5 ladder steps or whatever you'd call them. The very cheapest one would be free. This would be free content on your blog, YouTube, newsletter, whatever. Cheap would be products like SaaS, courses, anything along those lines. And then kind of like mid-tier would be done with you. So this would be stuff like coaching or like group coaching programs where they can kind of pay to get your strategic take, but then they go off and do the implementation. So in order for that to work really well, it often has to be paired with some kind of course. Because if you're going to say, hey, I'm going to give you some strategic advice, but you need to go build your own website, you have to be able to point them something to learn how to build the website. And then high tier would be like a productized service. So still a service that you're doing for them, entirely done for you, but not so bespoke that every single project is different. To me, that's kind of like tier 4. And then tier 5 would be done for you bespoke services. Every project's totally different, totally from the ground up, reinventing the wheel every time. That's our spectrum. The interesting thing about this ladder, though, is that as you go to the lower price point side of it, it takes more upfront time. So in other words, like if you were, well, not counting free, let's just say lowest price point, like course. If you were to go create a course about how to build a website, it would take you way longer than building a website would. And you don't get to make any money from it until you've made it. And my past is littered with SaaS products that I made and nobody ever bought, and I poured hundreds of hours into them. So in general, as a freelancer, it's best to start from the most expensive end of the spectrum and then work your way down as far or as not far as you want to go. Some freelancers only want to do bespoke work. They don't want to do productized services. They don't want to do done with you. They don't want to do products. They literally just want to be a highly paid freelancer, and that's totally cool. I think every freelancer ever benefits from creating free content. So if you wanted to be highly paid bespoke freelancer, probably you just want the bespoke services and then free content, blog, YouTube, newsletter, social, whatever you want to do. With that consideration out of the way, though, the one thing that is cool is that if you do want to one day make products, which I've noticed most freelancers do, I'd say like 70% of freelancers one day want to either start a SaaS, sell courses, maybe do some coaching, something like that. If you do want to one day go that route, the cool thing about the idea of an offer ladder is that you can find a way to like essentially have your marketing efforts for your freelance business also benefit your potential future product business. And in my mind, that's the ultimate hack. And if you can make that work, you essentially like get double the results for each hour you spend. So whenever I have somebody in the accelerator community who has some sort of audience that doesn't really seem that related to their freelancing, I'm always trying to think of ways that we can kind of get them both tied in together. Or similarly, if somebody is only freelancing, but they're wanting to build an audience and one day grow their own SaaS product or whatever, I'm, again, always trying to think of ways like, how can we start building your freelance business in a place where you can one day inject the product into your existing marketing funnel? I'm going to show you a couple examples of that. So first example is our very own DYF Brennan Dunn. So if you don't know Brennan, he started this whole WR freelancing business. And these days, his big focus is on his SaaS product called Right Message, which is a SaaS tool that allows you to essentially like personalize your website and increase your conversions as a result. He created this thing out of a need for DYF. And what's been interesting to watch about his evolution here is that he bought out his co-founder a little bit ago. So he's like solo dev, solo running the business now. But he was having a problem, which is that his onboarding for the SaaS wasn't very fluid. He needed it to be smoother. And I thought it was pretty clever how he addressed that, which was that he'll just do it for you. And so in Brennan's case, he did it almost in the inverse with his product ladder here. He started with Right Message. And then he was finding when running Right Message that he kind of missed sending out newsletters, because by the time he was really deep into Right Message, he wasn't doing much in the DYF area anymore. And he missed sending the DYF newsletter. So he started Create and Sell, which is email marketing advice. And this is a tool to enhance your email marketing. So what Brennan has in this offer ladder now is that we've got the top of funnel, free content, nurturing kind of thing. And then that funnels people into Right Message. And then basically you can set up Right Message yourself. It's just a product. Everyone can set it up. But for the big ballers who are running 7-figure businesses that want it set up by an expert, he has the Slice and Dice agency. So you can see his offer stack here. He doesn't have, to my knowledge, any done with you program. He doesn't have something where it's like a coaching program where he does a little bit of teaching, you often do it. So he has basically product services. Another cool example of this, Zach Spuckler, he's who I learned Facebook ads from. So he has a bunch of courses and stuff that are mostly beginner oriented. So he has like a lot of courses around creating a tripwire funnel, running Facebook ads, that kind of thing. But what's interesting is that he also has an agency, an ads agency, and he, I think, even does launch management as well. I think Zach probably has a hard time getting people to ascend into his agency from his courses, because most of his offers on the front end, like most of his courses and stuff, are pretty low ticket, and they're targeting people who are like just starting their course creator business. So in order to nurture somebody from that point to the point where they could afford his agency or launch management takes a long time. It's a very long game. But the thing to remember, the thing I try to remind myself, is that the cool thing about Zach's business is that by having a low ticket offer, he can afford to run Facebook ads for his business. Most freelancers can't really make Facebook ads work because, again, we need to target people who are doing really, really well in order to actually turn a profit. And Facebook ads just don't have that level of targeting to be able to only show it to people who are running 8-figure businesses. So Facebook ad is like a super wide net. And for Zach, by offering lower ticket programs, he allows himself to provide value to people at scale. And a very small percentage of those people turn into clients for the agency. And then there's this additional augmenter that I came to appreciate from my conversations with Maya in the 6 months to 6 figures podcast series here on the DYF podcast. Maya got a lot of referrals from people who follow her on Instagram, but the people who follow her on Instagram would never become clients. They just see Maya in their minds as like the authority on branding design. And so if they meet somebody out in the world who needs branding, they connect her with Maya. And I imagine Zach gets a lot of referrals as well from beginner course creators who know of Zach as running an ads agency, even though they can't afford him yet. And then they talk with some more experienced course creators saying they want to run ads, and they're like, oh my gosh, you should learn from this Zach guy. So that's a pretty cool thing that he's got going on. And I think you could probably say the same about Brennan. I'm going to have a chat with Brennan soon to see exactly what his email funnel looks like for how people are finding their way from Create and Sell into Slice and Dice. But I digress. The thing I really want you to take away for both of these is not to get overwhelmed thinking you need to create a product right now, because I think you probably don't. In 99% of freelancers' cases, creating a product is a big waste of time and a big distraction. And they should really be focused on finding a predictable way to get clients first, finding a way to really get a lot of leads coming in first. And only once they own a very large audience and a very good way to get traffic should they consider a product. So I'm not telling you to create a product. What I am telling you is to be thinking a few steps ahead. If you're doing your freelance services now and you know one day you want to make blah, 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 blah type of product, be thinking about ways where doing marketing for one helps you in the other. Every time Zach talks about running ads successfully, he's creating some degree of interest in somebody hiring his ads agency. So Brennan sends out an email pretty much every week, either about email marketing or personalization or something along those lines. And every time he does that, he's building just a little bit of interest in either his software tool or his agency. And so I think I've kicked this dead horse long enough. You get what I'm getting at. So be thinking about this with yourself. Be thinking about what vertical it makes sense to establish yourself in, where you could see one day having ideas. And the last thing I want to leave you with is that you get ideas for products as a result of doing the work. So if you don't have any product ideas now, please don't let that prevent you from pursuing a market as a freelancer. I think it would be a very, very, very big mistake to say, I can't choose my freelance niche until I'm sure that it's one that aligns with a product I would want to make one day. It kind of brings to mind like the core concepts from Cal Newport's "So Good They Can't Ignore You" book. He talks about how basically like you don't decide on your passion first and then find the work later. You find the work that you're good at, you do it, and then your passion comes as a result. And I think the same is true for software products and stuff. I've noticed from doing my productized CRO agency that I've gotten a lot of good product ideas just because I'm doing the work for clients. I'm like, I wish I had blank. Surely there's got to be a better way to blank. And that's kind of where the seeds of products come from. So all that said, do a little bit of noodling on this and think about how you can be moving in a direction that you're happy with. At risk of this video being way too long, I'll give you my niching shortcut before you go, because you're probably sitting there like, oh, Zach, I don't have a niche. I don't want to do any of this. So my shortcut for niching that might work for you is to basically understand that your niche is probably going to either be an industry or field or whatever that you've either worked in before, want to work in the future, or are currently working in right now. And so the way that's going to break down for most freelancers is either for the future one, it's probably going to either be SaaS, course creators, maybe e-commerce. That's like the big buckets that would be a lot of the good future ones. The right now one is going to be pretty much agencies, like because you're a freelancer right now. So other freelancers / agencies is who you are right now. And then past is going to be any past jobs you've worked or past clients you've worked with, whatever industry or kind of space they're in. My personal favorite is to go for the future one because I have ADHD. I like things to be interesting. And so by me knowing I want to be a course creator, I mean, I am a course creator now at DYF, so it's blending from future into present. But regardless, I really like talking with course creators. I like immersing myself in that world. So for me, picking a niche, I just say, boom, course creator, done, niche chosen. As long as this thing you want to be in the future or present or past has a valuable problem to solve and the money to spend on your services, if you're serving the successful people within it, it's a viable niche. So hopefully that was helpful. I would love if you could shoot me an email and tell me if you're liking these, if you prefer the interviews, etc. I still don't know, jury's out on if these solo episodes are something you actually like. So email for that is hello@doubleyourfreelancing.com. If you want to take these things a step further, our free Charge What You're Worth course is always a good next step. It gives you more clarity on how to position yourself to clients so that you can raise your rates, close more deals, and attract more high quality clients, which is very important as we're talking about not working with noobs and solving valuable problems and stuff. We also have the Double Your Rates toolkit that kind of builds on all that and adds a bunch of ChatGPT prompts to help you ideate around your offer and around your client profile and stuff like that. But I always say Charge What You're Worth is a good free starting point. So if you want to check that out, it's at dyf.link/pricing course. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd appreciate a good review and be sure to subscribe to get more of them. Thanks for being here and see you in the next one.